If the road gets winding and you're scared to fall.
At the height of the recital, Lucas steps onto the stage, his heart heavy with the loss of his father years before. The silence is palpable as he reveals an unpublished song, written by his father and forgotten in the attic. Each chord echoes longing and hope, deeply moving everyone present. In that moment, Lucas transforms his pain into music, touching the audience and rekindling hope in the midst of loss.
You're always part of me.
Lucas Parker was 8 years old when the world he knew changed forever. Living in the rainy city of Portland, Oregon, Lucas was an ordinary boy with an extraordinary bond with his father, Mark Parker. Mark was a local musician, known for his gentle smile, warm brown eyes, and the way he could make any room feel alive with his music. Lucas, with his tousled brown hair and bright green eyes, was his father's shadow, following him to every gig, every practice, every quiet moment spent strumming a guitar in their cozy living room. Their home was filled with music. Mornings often began with the sound of Mark softly playing his guitar in the kitchen, humming melodies as he made breakfast. Lucas would sit at the table, his small hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate, listening intently, sometimes joining in with his own little guitar. The two would laugh, making up silly lyrics, or sometimes just letting the music speak for itself. It was their language, a secret world where only they belonged. Mark taught Lucas everything he knew about music. He showed him how to tune a guitar, how to feel the rhythm in his chest, how to let his emotions flow through the strings. They wrote songs together, some playful, some serious, all filled with the love and joy they shared. For Lucas, music was not just a hobby. It was the heartbeat of his relationship with his father. But life, as it often does, took a turn no one could have expected. One rainy afternoon, Mark left for a gig at a local cafe. He promised Lucas they would finish their new song when he got home. Lucas watched from the window as his father waved goodbye, his guitar case slung over his shoulder, his smile reassuring. Hours passed, and the rain grew heavier, tapping against the glass like 1,000 tiny fingers. Lucas waited, his guitar resting on his lap, the unfinished song echoing in his mind. That night, there was a knock at the door. Lucas's mother, Sarah, answered, her face pale as she listened to the police officer standing on the porch. Mark had been in a car accident. He didn't make it. The world seemed to stop. Lucas felt as if the rain had seeped into his bones, cold and unrelenting. The house, once alive with music, fell silent. The days that followed were a blur of tears, hushed voices, and the heavy weight of loss. Lucas clung to his guitar, but every time he tried to play, the notes sounded hollow, empty. The music that once brought him joy now only reminded him of what he had lost. He stopped playing altogether, placing his guitar in its case and carrying it up to the attic, where he tucked it away along with his father's old guitar and a box of their handwritten songs. Sarah did her best to hold the family together. She was a strong woman, with kind eyes and a gentle touch, but the loss of Mark left a void that nothing could fill. She encouraged Lucas to talk about his feelings, to remember the good times, but Lucas withdrew, retreating into a world of silence and solitude. The laughter that once filled their home was replaced by quiet dinners and long, sleepless nights. School became a refuge of sorts, a place where Lucas could lose himself in routine and avoid the questions and pitying looks of neighbors and family friends. He made few friends, preferring the company of his own thoughts, but there was one exception: Chloe Bennett. Chloe was a whirlwind of energy and creativity, with curly red hair and freckles that danced across her nose. She had a knack for making people smile, and she refused to let Lucas disappear into his grief. Chloe would sit with Lucas at lunch, telling him stories about her dog, her latest art project, or the ridiculous things her little brother had done. She never pushed him to talk about his father, but she was always there, a steady presence in the storm of his emotions. Over time, Lucas began to open up, sharing small pieces of himself, laughing at Chloe's jokes, and even helping her with her music homework. Still, the guitar remained untouched, a silent reminder of a life that felt impossibly far away. As the years passed, the pain of loss dulled, but it never disappeared. Lucas grew taller, his features sharpening with age, but the sadness in his eyes lingered. He watched as his mother worked tirelessly to provide for them, taking on extra shifts at the hospital, always making sure Lucas had what he needed. He admired her strength, but he knew she missed Mark just as much as he did. Every so often, Sarah would suggest that Lucas pick up his guitar again, reminding him of how much joy it used to bring him. Lucas would shake his head, unable to explain the ache that came with even the thought of playing. The attic became a place he avoided, its dusty corners filled with memories he wasn't ready to face. Yet, beneath the surface, the music never truly left him. He would find himself tapping out rhythms on his desk, humming melodies under his breath, dreaming of the songs he and his father never got to finish. The world moved on, but Lucas remained suspended in time, caught between the past and the present, longing for a connection he feared was lost forever. And so, 5 years slipped by. Lucas turned 13, his life marked by the absence of music and the quiet ache of longing. But change, as it often does, was waiting just around the corner, a change that would begin with a simple invitation and end with a song that would heal not only Lucas's heart, but the hearts of everyone who heard it. 5 years had passed since that rainy night, but for Lucas, the memory of his father's last wave lingered like a shadow in every corner of their home. The world outside had changed. Portland's skyline grew taller, new neighbors moved in, and the seasons cycled through their colors. But inside Lucas, time seemed to stand still. He was now 13, taller and leaner, his once round cheeks giving way to the beginnings of adolescence. His hair remained stubbornly messy, and his green eyes, once so bright, now held a quiet depth, as if he carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. The Parker home, though smaller than most in their neighborhood, was filled with warmth. Sarah, Lucas's mother, worked long hours as a nurse at the local hospital. She was a pillar of strength, her gentle voice and determined spirit keeping their lives stitched together. She never let Lucas see her cry, but sometimes, late at night, he would hear the soft strains of his father's favorite song drifting up from the living room, played on an old record player. It was her way of keeping Mark's memory alive, even as she tried to help Lucas move forward. Lucas's days followed a quiet routine. He woke early, helped his mother with breakfast, and walked to school with Chloe. Chloe had become his anchor, her laughter and boundless energy a lifeline in the sea of his grief. She was a year younger than Lucas, but her confidence and creativity made her seem older. She wore her curly red hair in wild ponytails, and her clothes were always splattered with paint or ink from her latest project. Chloe was the kind of friend who would show up at your door with a box of donuts just because she thought you looked sad, or who would spend hours helping you study for a test, even if she didn't need to. At school, Lucas was quiet but attentive. He excelled in his classes, especially English and history, but he avoided music class whenever he could. The sight of guitars or the sound of students practicing in the music room made his chest tighten. His teachers noticed his reluctance, but they respected his boundaries, understanding that some wounds took longer to heal. Chloe, however, was not so easily deterred. She loved music, she played the piano and sang in the school choir, and she often tried to coax Lucas into joining her. "You have a gift, Lucas," she would say, her eyes shining with sincerity. "Your dad would want you to keep playing." Lucas would smile, grateful for her kindness, but he always found an excuse to say no. One chilly afternoon in early spring, as the cherry blossoms began to bloom along the streets of Portland, the school principal made an announcement that would set everything in motion. The annual spring recital was coming up, a tradition where students could showcase their musical talents, either solo or in groups. It was the highlight of the school year, drawing parents, teachers, and students from all over the city. Chloe was immediately excited. She rushed to Lucas's side after the announcement, her cheeks flushed with anticipation. "You have to do it with me this year," she exclaimed, grabbing his arm. "We could play something together, or you could do a solo. It would be amazing." Lucas hesitated, the familiar ache rising in his chest. "I don't know, Chloe. I haven't played in a long time. I'm not sure I even remember how." Chloe shook her head, undeterred. "That's not true. Music doesn't just disappear, Lucas. It's a part of you. And besides, I'll help you. We'll practice together. It'll be fun." That evening, at dinner, Sarah brought up the recital as well. She had heard about it from another parent at the hospital, and saw it as an opportunity for Lucas to reconnect with the part of himself he had locked away. "You know, your dad loved the spring recital," she said softly, her eyes meeting Lucas's across the table. "He always said it was his favorite time of year. Maybe you could play something this year, for him." "For yourself." Lucas looked down at his plate, pushing his food around with his fork. The idea of performing in front of the whole school terrified him, but the thought of honoring his father's memory tugged at his heart. He remembered the way Mark's eyes would light up when they played together, the pride in his voice when he talked about Lucas's talent. Maybe just maybe, it was time to try again. The next day, Chloe presented Lucas with a plan. "We'll start slow," she said, handing him a list of songs they could practice. "Just you, me, and the music room after school, no pressure. If you don't want to do the recital, that's okay, but at least give it a shot." Lucas agreed, more out of a desire to make Chloe happy than any real conviction. Their first practice was awkward. Lucas's fingers felt stiff and the guitar strings bit into his skin, but Chloe was patient, encouraging him with every chord, every note. She played the piano, her nimble fingers dancing across the keys, filling the room with warmth and light. As the days passed, Lucas began to relax. The music room became a sanctuary, a place where he could forget his worries and lose himself in the melodies. He started to remember the lessons his father had taught him, the way to let the music flow, to play from the heart. Chloe was a wonderful partner, her enthusiasm infectious, her laughter a balm to his wounded spirit. At home, Sarah noticed the change in Lucas. He smiled more, laughed more, and even hummed tunes under his breath. She watched from the kitchen as he tapped out rhythms on the table, his eyes shining with a spark she hadn't seen in years. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she was grateful for every step Lucas took toward healing. One evening, as Lucas and Chloe practiced a duet in the music room, Chloe paused and looked at him thoughtfully. "You know, Lucas, I think you should do a solo for the recital, something special, something that means a lot to you." Lucas hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face. "What would I play?" Chloe smiled. "I don't know, but I think you'll figure it out. Just listen to your heart." That night, Lucas lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about his father, about the songs they used to play, about the music that still lived inside him, waiting to be set free. He knew Chloe was right. If he was going to perform, it had to be something meaningful, something that would honor the bond he shared with his father. The next day, Lucas made a decision. He would go up to the attic and retrieve his guitar. It was time to face the memories he had buried, to see if the music still had the power to heal. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying the story, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. The attic was a place Lucas had avoided for years. It was more than just a storage space. It was a museum of memories, a silent sanctuary where the echoes of laughter and music lingered in the dust and shadows. The narrow staircase creaked under his weight as he climbed, each step feeling heavier than the last. The faint scent of cedar and old books greeted him as he pushed open the door, sunlight streaming through the small window and illuminating the motes that danced in the air. Lucas hesitated at the threshold, his heart pounding. The last time he had been here, he was a grieving child, desperate to hide away the reminders of a life that felt shattered beyond repair. Now, at 13, he felt both older and younger. Older for the burdens he had carried, younger for the vulnerability that still clung to him. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The attic was cluttered with boxes labeled in his mother's careful handwriting, Christmas decorations, old clothes, Mark's records. There, against the far wall, stood 2 guitar cases, one his own, smaller and covered in stickers from music shops and summer camps, and the other, larger and more worn, bearing the initials MP in faded gold letters. Lucas's hands trembled as he reached for his case first. He brushed off a layer of dust, the stickers now dull and peeling at the edges. He opened it slowly, half expecting the guitar to be warped or broken. But it was just as he remembered. Smooth, honey-colored wood, the strings slightly out of tune but intact. He ran his fingers along the fretboard, memories flooding back, the feel of his father's hands guiding his, the sound of their laughter as they played together, the warmth of Mark's voice singing harmonies beside him. But it was the other case that drew his attention now. Mark's guitar had always seemed larger than life, both literally and figuratively. It was the instrument of a performer, a storyteller, a father who had poured his soul into every note. Lucas knelt beside it, his breath catching in his throat as he traced the initials with his finger. He hesitated, then opened the case. The familiar scent of rosewood and leather wafted up, mingling with the dust. The guitar was beautiful, its surface worn smooth by years of playing. But what caught Lucas's eye was not the instrument itself, but a battered notebook tucked beneath the neck, its cover creased and stained with coffee rings and ink smudges. Lucas picked it up, his hands shaking. He recognized his father's handwriting immediately, loopy, confident, and unmistakably Mark. The first page was dated 5 years ago, just a few weeks before the accident. It read, "To Lucas, for the songs we haven't sung yet. Love, Dad." Tears pricked at Lucas's eyes. He flipped through the pages, finding lyrics, chord progressions, and notes written in the margins. Some songs were unfinished, just fragments of ideas, while others were complete, their words filled with longing, hope, and love. There were doodles in the margins, guitars, stars, little stick figures of a man and a boy playing music together. One song in particular stood out. It was titled Boundless, and the lyrics spoke of a love that transcended time and distance, a father's promise to always be there, no matter what. Lucas read the words over and over, his tears falling freely now. He could hear his father's voice in his mind, gentle and reassuring, urging him to keep going, to keep playing, to keep loving. The song was a message, a gift left behind for the moment Lucas needed it most. He sat there for a long time, the notebook open in his lap, the guitars beside him. The attic, once a place of sorrow, now felt like a sanctuary again. The pain of loss was still there, but it was softened by the realization that his father had never truly left him. Mark's love lived on in the music, in the memories, in the very air Lucas breathed. With trembling hands, Lucas picked up his guitar and began to play. The notes came slowly at first, his fingers stiff from years of neglect, but soon the music began to flow. He played the chords to Boundless, his voice shaky but growing stronger with each verse. The attic filled with sound, the walls reverberating with the echoes of father and son. Downstairs, Sarah paused in the kitchen, her heart swelling as she heard the faint strains of music drifting down from above. She closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her, tears streaming down her cheeks. She knew in that moment that Lucas was finding his way back. The next day at school, Lucas found Chloe waiting for him by the lockers, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Did you get your guitar?" she asked, bouncing on the balls of her feet. Lucas nodded, a shy smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, and I found something else too." He told her about the notebook, about the song his father had written, about how it made him feel connected to Mark again. Chloe listened intently, her expression softening. "That's amazing, Lucas. You should play it at the recital. It would mean so much. To you, to your mom, to everyone." Lucas hesitated, the old fear creeping in. "What if I mess up? What if I can't do it?" Chloe squeezed his hand. "You won't mess up. And even if you do, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're sharing something real, something beautiful. That's what music is all about." Lucas spent the next few weeks practicing every day. He played in the attic, in his room, sometimes even in the backyard when the weather was nice. Sarah would listen from the kitchen, her heart full of pride and gratitude. Chloe helped him with the arrangement, offering suggestions and encouragement, her own excitement growing with each rehearsal. As the day of the recital approached, Lucas felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation. He knew the song by heart now, every chord, every word etched into his soul. He thought about his father, about the promise he had made to never stop playing, to never stop loving. He was ready to share that promise with the world. The night before the recital, Lucas sat in his room, the notebook open on his desk. He wrote a letter to his father, thanking him for the music, for the memories, for the love that had carried him through the darkest days. He promised to keep playing, to keep singing, to keep believing in the power of music to heal and unite. He placed the letter in the notebook, closed it gently, and set it beside his guitar. He lay down to sleep, his heart lighter than it had been in years, the melody of Boundless echoing in his dreams. The day of the spring recital dawned bright and clear, a rare gift in Portland's often gray and drizzly spring. Lucas awoke with a fluttering in his chest, a mix of excitement and anxiety that made it hard to eat breakfast. Sarah had made pancakes, her way of celebrating special occasions, and she smiled at Lucas with a warmth that steadied his nerves. "You're going to do great," she said, squeezing his hand. "Your dad would be so proud." Lucas nodded, swallowing past a lump in his throat. He glanced at the guitar case leaning against the wall, the battered notebook tucked safely inside. He had practiced the song 100 times, but today it felt different, more real, more important. Today, he would share his father's music with the world. Chloe arrived early, her hair pulled back in a neat braid, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. She wore a blue dress that matched the streaks of sky outside, and she carried a small bouquet of wild flowers. "For luck," she said, handing them to Lucas. "And for courage." Lucas smiled, feeling the familiar comfort of her presence. "Thanks, Chloe. I think I'm going to need both." The school auditorium was buzzing with energy. Students milled about backstage, tuning instruments and rehearsing lines, their voices echoing off the high ceilings. Parents and teachers filled the rows of seats, chatting quietly as they waited for the show to begin. Lucas peeked out from behind the curtain, searching for his mother in the crowd. He spotted her in the third row, her face alight with pride and love. The program began with a flurry of performances: piano solos, choral numbers, a lively rendition of a pop song by the school band. Chloe performed a duet with another student, her voice clear and strong, earning enthusiastic applause. Lucas watched from the wings, his heart pounding, his hands clammy with nerves. When it was finally his turn, Lucas felt as if the world had narrowed to a single point: the stage, the spotlight, the guitar in his hands. He took a deep breath and stepped out into the light, blinking against the brightness. The auditorium fell silent, all eyes on him. He stood for a moment, letting the quiet settle. He could feel the weight of his father's guitar, the smooth wood familiar and comforting beneath his fingers. He glanced down at the notebook, open to the page marked "Boundless." The words stared up at him, a promise and a challenge. Lucas looked out at the audience, searching for his mother's face. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. Chloe gave him a thumbs up from the side of the stage. Lucas closed his eyes, remembering the sound of his father's voice, the warmth of his embrace, the music that had once filled their home. He stepped up to the microphone, his voice steady but soft. "This song is for my dad," he said, his words carrying through the stillness. "He wrote it for me before he died, and I found it in his old notebook. It's called Boundless." "I hope it reminds you of someone you love, too." He strummed the first chord, the sound ringing out clear and true. The nerves faded, replaced by a sense of purpose, of connection. He began to sing, his voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each line. The lyrics spoke of love that never ends, of memories that linger, of the bond between father and son that not even death could break. As Lucas sang, the auditorium was transformed. The music wrapped around the audience like a warm embrace, drawing them into the story of loss and hope, of grief and healing. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she listened, her heart aching with pride and sorrow. Chloe watched from the wings, her hands clasped tightly, her own eyes shining with emotion.
No matter where you go, no matter where you are, my love will find you like the light from a star. When you feel alone, just listen and you'll see my love is always near. You're always part of me. Through every shadow, through every night, I'll be the music that guides you to the light. If the road gets winding and you're scared to fall, let my song surround you. I'll catch you through it all. When you feel alone, just listen and you'll see my love is always near. You're always part of me. Through every shadow, through every night, I'll be the music that guides you to the light. No matter where you go, no matter where you are, my love will find you like the light from a star.
final chorus soared, Lucas's voice rising above the hush, filling the room with light. For a moment, it felt as if Mark was there beside him, his presence woven into every note, every word. Lucas finished the song, the last chord lingering in the air, and the silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Then slowly the audience began to clap. It started with a few scattered hands, then grew into a thunderous ovation. People rose to their feet, cheering and wiping away tears. Lucas stood frozen, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support. He looked out at the crowd, his eyes meeting his mother's, and saw in her face the answer to every question he had ever asked. He was not alone. Backstage, Chloe rushed to his side, throwing her arms around him. "You did it, Lucas! You really did it!" Lucas hugged her back, his heart pounding with relief and joy. "I couldn't have done it without you," he whispered. Sarah joined them, her arms wrapping both children in a fierce embrace. "Your father would be so proud," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And so am I." Lucas smiled through his tears, feeling lighter than he had in years. The music had brought him back to life, had given him a way to say goodbye and hello all at once. He knew the journey wasn't over, that grief would always be a part of him. But now he understood that love was, too, boundless, infinite, and always within reach. The applause from the recital echoed in Lucas's ears long after the final curtain had fallen. The moment he stepped off the stage, he was swept into a whirlwind of hugs, congratulations, and tearful smiles. Teachers he barely knew came up to shake his hand. Parents from other grades offered words of encouragement, and his classmates, some of whom had never spoken to him before, gave him high fives and pats on the back. The song, "Boundless," had touched something deep within everyone who heard it. It was as if, for a brief moment, the entire auditorium had shared in Lucas's journey, feeling his loss, his hope, and his love. Sarah was the first to reach him backstage. She wrapped her arms around Lucas and held him tight, her tears soaking into his shoulder. "You were incredible," she whispered, her voice trembling with pride. "Your father would have loved this. He would have loved you." Lucas hugged her back, feeling the strength of her embrace. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the ache of emptiness. Instead, he felt full of love, of memories, of the music that had always been a part of him. Chloe joined them, her face flushed with excitement. "You made everyone cry, Lucas, even Mr. Thompson, and he never cries." They laughed together, the sound bright and free. The weight that had pressed on Lucas's chest for so long seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of peace he hadn't known he was missing. The three of them, Lucas, Sarah, and Chloe, stood together in the crowded backstage area, basking in the afterglow of the performance. As the crowd began to thin, Lucas found himself surrounded by classmates and teachers, all eager to share their own stories of loss and love. Some told him about grandparents who had passed away, others about friends who had moved far away. Each story was different, but the emotions were the same. Lucas realized that his song had given people permission to feel, to remember, and to heal. The days following the recital were filled with a new energy. At school, Lucas was no longer the quiet boy who kept to himself. He was invited to join the music club, asked to help with the school's upcoming talent show, and even approached by a local reporter who wanted to write a story about his performance. Chloe, ever the enthusiastic friend, made sure everyone knew about Lucas's talent, telling anyone who would listen about the song, the notebook, and the legacy of Mark Parker. At home, the change was even more profound. The guitar, once relegated to the attic, now had a place of honor in the living room. Lucas played every day, sometimes alone, sometimes with Sarah or Chloe. The house was once again filled with music, sometimes joyful, sometimes bittersweet, but always alive. Sarah began to sing along, her voice blending with Lucas's in a harmony that felt both new and familiar. It was as if Mark's spirit lingered in the notes, a gentle reminder that love never truly dies. Lucas also began to write his own songs, inspired by the notebook his father had left behind. He filled pages with lyrics about hope, about healing, about the journey from darkness to light. He shared these songs with Chloe, who encouraged him to perform them at open mic nights and community events. Each performance was a step forward, a way to honor his father's memory while forging his own path. One afternoon, as Lucas and Chloe practiced in the park, a small crowd gathered to listen. Among them was Mrs. Jenkins, the school's music teacher, who had watched Lucas's transformation with quiet pride. After the song ended, she approached him with a smile. "You have a gift, Lucas," she said. not just for music, but for touching people's hearts. Have you ever thought about teaching others, about helping kids who are struggling like you were? The idea took root in Lucas's mind. He remembered how lost he had felt after his father's death, how music had seemed out of reach. If he could help someone else find their way back, the way Chloe and Sarah had helped him, it would be the greatest tribute he could offer to his father's legacy. Lucas began volunteering at the community center, teaching guitar to younger kids. Some were shy, some were boisterous, but all of them responded to his gentle encouragement and patient instruction. He saw himself in their hesitant fingers, their uncertain smiles, and he made it his mission to show them that music was for everyone, that it could heal, inspire, and connect. As the months passed, Lucas's confidence grew. He performed at school assemblies, local festivals, and charity events, always including Boundless in his setlist. The song became his signature, a reminder of where he had come from and the journey he had taken. People began to recognize him around town, stopping to thank him for his music, to share their own stories of loss and hope. Through it all, Chloe remained by his side, her friendship a constant source of strength and joy. They wrote songs together, dreamed of forming a band, and made plans for the future. Sarah, too, found new purpose in her son's music, volunteering at the community center and supporting Lucas in every way she could. The attic, once a place of sorrow, became a place of celebration. Lucas and Sarah cleaned it out, turning it into a music room filled with instruments, posters, and photos of Mark. They invited friends and neighbors to join them for jam sessions, filling the space with laughter and song. The pain of loss was still there, but it was softened by the love and connection that music had brought back into their lives. On the anniversary of Mark's death, Lucas and Sarah held a small concert in the park, inviting everyone who had been touched by Boundless. They played the song together, their voices rising in harmony, the crowd singing along. It was a moment of healing, of remembrance, of gratitude for the love that had carried them through the darkest days. As the sun set over Portland, Lucas looked out at the faces in the crowd, friends, family, strangers who had become part of his story. He felt his father's presence in the music, in the laughter, in the tears. He knew that the journey of healing was ongoing, that there would be hard days and sad moments, but he also knew that he was not alone. The love between father and son was, indeed, boundless. It lived on in every note, every chord, every song, and as Lucas strummed the final chord, he smiled, knowing that the music would never end. Thanks for joining us on this emotional journey. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. We love seeing where our community is from.